Welcome to Talking Training with the Trades, the podcast dedicated to trustees and directors looking to discover how to unlock hidden potential and prevent massive risk in their training program. I'm Jennifer Germain, owner of a law firm and coach to apprenticeship programs across the nation in the construction trades. Ready to discover breakthrough results in your training program? Let's get started. Welcome everyone to Talking Training with the Trades. Today's guest is Doug Donovan. He is the co-founder and CEO of Interplay Learning, and his bio is pretty interesting. So I'm going to actually read more of it than I usually do on the show so you guys know what you're going to get on this episode. Interplay Learning, it's a leading online training platform specifically designed for the skilled trades. He launched it back in 2016, and its mission is to solve the critical growing skills gap problem and rapidly accelerate the professional careers for more hands-on working through virtual reality and 3D simulation training and education. I know for me, I attend a lot of conferences, and this is always touched on, and it's so exciting to see what's coming out. So I am so excited to welcome you to the show, Doug. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Doug, I always like to hear more about you. This is such a unique area that is going to be growing exceptionally fast. How did you end up deciding that you wanted to get into virtual reality and 3D simulation for the skilled trades?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish I had this amazing answer that I've grown up my whole life thinking this is what I would do. But I will say this is actually my fourth company. And so I do enjoy seeing business opportunities or challenges that I think, there's a business there. And so I've been through this a couple different times, but this one was really interesting because I was with a company, I was on the West Coast, and one of the things we were doing was training energy auditors, right? These are folks who make homes or buildings more energy efficient. And our training program only allowed for one day in the field, frankly, for financial reasons, to make the math work on the business. And it was very obvious to me that our graduates from that program just did not get enough repetition for the hands-on component of their job. And so we looked around at the time and said, you could use simulation, which, this was, more than 4 years ago when we really, the idea, was the genesis of the idea. And we were surprised that, military medical aviation had been using this type of simulation learning for decades, and it hadn't been adopted at all in the trades, and certainly not in energy efficiency, which is a really niche trade. And so with that, I said, you could basically take the best of education technology that's been proved out in these other higher capitalized industries where lives were at stake and they had to use the best in training and start bringing it to the trade. So yeah, that was the genesis of this whole thing.
Interesting. I appreciate you sharing that with us. So then can you lay the foundation of what your company actually does to help the skilled trades? Can you set that out for us first?
Yeah, sure. So, there's a couple ways we could come at it, but I'll do it this way. There's been, in the last decade, maybe 15 years, been tremendous advancement in this education technology, right? The ability to us to play more dynamic stuff on our everyday computers, right? We live on it every day. The ubiquitous of broadband happening over the last 7-8 years. All of a sudden, we get this more powerful tool in our hands, and that tool was really feeding the knowledge workers of the world, right? Let's lazily say the white-collar workers, right? So you see things like big on-demand online catalogs for learning a lot of coding skills or business skills or marketing skills. But we saw that there really wasn't anything like that, a trusted, curated catalog of learning for the hands-on worker, the electrical, mechanical, industrial worker. And it made some sense, right? I could see some reticence to think that that's going to be as applicable, right? It's different training a Java coder versus an electrician. And certainly the tools to do that are going to be different. But with education technology advancing where it was with 3D simulations and the add of virtual reality, now you could really start saying, well, let's leverage the best in that and bring it the sort of the blue collar trades. And when we looked around and saw that that vacuum was there, and we had some experience in building these 3D sims, which are really powerful at condensing learning and giving people scenario-based learning where they can do a lot of repetitions with a lot of variables and a lot of time in a minimal amount of time, we decided to say, let's build a catalog. Let's build a catalog for this worker so that they'll have somewhere to go to continually develop their skills. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So what type of workers can you make this, take it even further? Are you building these catalogs for right now? Where are you at? Where you see yourself going? I know that's a lot of questions. I'll break it down.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. We're going to a lot of places. So our deepest catalogs are in HVAC, both light commercial, although that's moving more commercial every day. HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and facility maintenance, and with multifamily being the first place, but commercial maintenance is coming. Really focused on, let's call it the existing buildings, right? The service work around existing buildings. Where we'll go will be a lot more around construction, a lot deeper on some of the commercial electrical applications, et cetera. Really trying to stay around that for the next year and a half, 2 years. And then who knows, right? It may go into telecom and utility level work, that type of thing. But that's where we started, and that's where we found a lot of success the last year and a half.
So exciting. So break this down even further for me. You know that my market that I work with the most are these skilled trades where they have their own training centers. For the most part, these individuals had been coming on site to do all of their training. How are you working with these training centers to implement this virtual reality and 3D? And what do you see that actually evolving into in the future too?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, we are quick to say, look, we know that this is a part of the portfolio of training, right? What we do is not going to replace a lot of that hands-on time. That's just so valuable. But what we can say is if you embed in some virtual training, what you'll find is that hands-on time is more efficient, more effective. Sometimes you can condense it, and in the end, you're going to end up with better learning outcomes. And so what we're working with, like one of our clients is the sheet metal union, and their training arm is ITI. And ITI has, I think, 100 training centers across the country, 65 of which are really service-oriented, and that's where our content is the deepest. So they've rolled out a program since February. I think we're now officially live on 65 of them, where they really emphasize the virtual reality side of it. And what they appreciated was the ability to mimic in the field activities in rapid succession and change variables. So somebody, for example, could use a rooftop unit and get 30 different faults and spend a couple hours in there, and really it's almost like they had 2 years of experience in the field because of all these faults they can do. Well, they have, you can imagine, world-class training centers, right? So they don't quote need VR to add to them, but what they found is it's a real enhancement of their program because of some of the unique attributes it brings to designing a training program. Interestingly, they adopted it with really the heaviest interest was VR and enhancing their in-person. Well, this was just prior to COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And so the timing was pretty good because everything we do is consumable on any device, right? The VR is kind of the sexy piece that people like talking about, and it's incredibly powerful, don't get me wrong. But there's a ton of consumption on tablets and just regular desktops or laptops from anywhere. And so, yeah, everybody was faced with, geez, we can't send people into these buildings now, or we don't know how that's going to work. Let's use the virtual training, the online training, to make this time more productive. So they've really ramped up the applications of the online delivery of the tool. So it really gives you another powerful tool in your toolbox of training, right? So they were able to use it virtually. They're going to use it in person. Interestingly, we have a lot of customers who use it. You think of virtual reality as this sort of individual experience, but we have people who project it to a screen. And so they'll do a group training, but it's as if they're on a rooftop because that person in the virtual setting will be, quote, on the rooftop in a virtual setting, and they'll all be able to see it. So we're seeing people use this in a myriad of ways.
So that's fascinating. I mean, my mind goes to so many different ways just of what you talked about. So with, let's say, COVID, because one of the questions I had for you is I feel like this is actually going to be the trend for the future because COVID changed the dynamic for so many of these apprenticeship programs. So have you gotten any feedback from what it has looked like people actually participating in it? What does that look like for you so far, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, our business really kind of took off about a year ago and started moving, but in March it just went to a different level, and a lot of it was anybody on the fence on technical training, virtual technical training, said, I can't be on the fence anymore, I'm in, right? They're sort of forced to do it. It was a real catalyst to do that, and so we saw our usage numbers go through the roof, even with our current customers who are active, but then all of a sudden you saw them really get active, right? Because people were trapped at home and they wanted to make that time productive. So we've seen that. Then the other thing is, it's been nice the last couple months, is we've seen a lot of expansion because people have now, if they were using it or if they're resistant to it and they were forced to use it, now they're seeing how effective it is. And now they've sort of gotten through that first friction point, right? Like anything new, there's natural friction. You got to get champions. You got to, as good as you can name any technology, Jennifer, that you and I have, like move into that digital calendar. Well, I've had my paper one forever, right? It's hard to make that move. Anytime you're adopting new technology, and to fight that inertia is hard. Well, COVID kind of gave everybody a big boost. And when they got to the other side and they actually started deploying it and using it and seeing the outcomes, it's led to, more and more business. So you no doubt that the digital transformation that we're all feeling, right, and talking about, whether it's Zoom or, more online ordering or, all this stuff that we're sort of forced to do now, technical virtual training was also a huge beneficiary of that.
Okay, so I want to take the audience in two different ways to see what this is like, and I want to go down the participant route, and I also want to go through the people running the training program and what they see too. So why don't we talk about the participant route? What are you hearing from the people that are actually using the virtual reality or any type of training that you have online? What are they saying about it? Maybe they were hesitant to adopt and now they have. Can you give me some experiences that you guys have had so far?
Yeah, the thing that we use in our marketing material, because the market told us this, right? This is digital training that techs will actually use, because the simulations are really engaging. I mean, I was for years reluctant to use the word they look like video games, because it, to me, sometimes devalues what it can do on the learning front. But now I've sort of gotten over that, and I've just embraced it and said, look, they look like video games. But instead of killing the bad guy and whatever, some first-person shooter, you have a multimeter, and you're troubleshooting for a faulty transformer, and you're on a rooftop unit, or you're a big heat pump, or you're in a chiller, and your brain is fundamentally tricked that you're there, especially in VR. And so the users have come back to us and said, we really enjoy this. Like, it's not passive learning. It's not just sitting there zoning out while somebody speaks at me. It's really active learning, and we hear that again and again. We had another client of ours, we have a handful of the locals for the UA, and one of the training directors, we just did a case study, and the quote on the case study was him saying, "I've never had anybody ask to take training home." And with your stuff, they are. And so the response has been extraordinary. And, we do simulations as the guts, right? We've been talking about that heavily. We also do a bunch of video-based training, as you can imagine, right? You can't learn everything in a simulation. You need some foundational stuff. And so we sort of backfill a lot of the catalogs with that. But we built that all in the last year and a half, 2 years. So you can imagine our approach there, right? Everything is micro-learning. Everything's 4 to 6 minutes max. Our max is 6 minutes of any kind of dynamic video or voiceover video. It's very active graphically, etc. So, unfortunately, people went to digital training too early. And 15 years ago, they said, "Oh, we can deliver it online." And what they got a PDF of a book. And, that's not going to serve this market well, right? Part of the reason that people are in this market is because they didn't want to sit in front of that book and read 300 pages about how to be a tradesperson. They wanted to go do it. And so we're trying to mimic that as much as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It reminds me of when somebody's like, "Oh, here's the online training." You get on, and it's like the videos from the '80s. Like people are dressed in like the old school, and you're just like, "Well, I don't even want to participate in
Yeah,
this." It's like so outdated.
yeah, you can't even
Brutal.
concentrate because you're looking at that, that members only jacket thinking, really? Do we think that was cool?
Yes. So paint, since we are audio and we can't see this in front of us, will you paint this picture for me? Because it's almost sounding like what you're describing to me is if I'm an apprentice and I'm going into train, maybe they're showing me in person and I'm not able to get like this weld exactly right. I can go up to my instructor and say, "Hey, I would love to take this home. Can I take this home and practice on your system?" Am I saying this kind of right?
Yeah, yes and no. I
For me,
mean, basically, yeah. Think of it this way. I mean, we're a cloud-based delivery of this virtual training. So there's no quote. When I say take it home, it's because in that case in the UA, they were actually taking the headset home, the
mm-hmm.
VR headset. But if let's assume we'll put VR on the sideline right now and just say, do you have a tablet and do you have a computer that you're getting the internet at home, right? If you do, you've got training at home, right? You don't need to take anything home. And so, yeah, maybe that was a little confusing. So fundamentally what's happening now, and most of these training organizations now have learning management systems, right? You've heard LMS, learning management system, where, although some are more advanced than others, where, Bob or Sally, the apprentice, has a login and they're doing certain things in a digital setting anyway as part of the general training program, even before we came along. And now let's beef that up with a big catalog of technical learning. So that, just like any other training program, might be weaved into their Wednesday or Thursday nights there. They might be using the digital version. Or, during COVID, they said, you're not coming into the training center, so just log in. Just log in just like you would log into your Gmail or your Yahoo email. They log into the ITI version of us. ITI has a white label, right? We're powering it behind them. And they log into their LMS and there's access to all of our content. So part of the beauty of that SaaS delivery is just like we consume everything all over the place today, right? You might check your email while sitting at a coffee shop or at a red light. You shouldn't be doing that, but you might. We're always connected. And so now imagine anytime you're connected, you have access to technical training. And that's the beauty of that sort of server-based delivery. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So then we just laughed about the old 80s videos that went on. How do you guys keep things updated and fresh then?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is I don't want to get too nerdy around the delivery of simulations, but we have a single code base. We actually call and we have an authoring engine, a digital authoring engine to make simulations really rapidly. We actually took 1.5 years just to build this authoring engine that was purpose-built for tradespeople to learn installation, diagnostics, inspection, commissioning, preventative maintenance, and tool proficiency. Really, that's it, right? Those 6 activities usually capture a lot of what these folks have to do. And so we have an authoring engine that allows us to build content really rapidly. And inside of that authoring engine is, really sound instructional design on how to learn those skills, how to move from point A to point B in your understanding that we've honed through the years. So one, we have this ability to create content at a high clip, and you can imagine, right, the world changes fast now, and you got to be able to, you can't allow that video with the members only jacket to sit on the shelf, or people just won't accept that anymore. And so this authoring engine allows us to rapidly get new content out there. In fact, some of our biggest customers are manufacturers. Again, we're deep in HVAC, but like Goodman and Daikin and Carrier, Gree, all customers of ours. And one of the things we're doing for them is getting their training out quickly on new products. So if there's a new Carrier heat pump with an inverter technology, which is generally new to the market, let's get the training out there quickly. And we're able to do that with this authoring engine. Then the other piece is, after we build these simulations, it's a single code base that runs every simulation. So if we want to deliver to a new device, let's say they invent the next iPad and we want to deliver it to that, well, we can easily, design simple compiler code at the end and publish, and it goes to that magic new iPad that they release. So the device stuff is easy to keep up with. And then the last thing is, because it's digital, iterating it is rather easy. So think of if I did a video shoot on how to troubleshoot a chiller, right, with a cooling tower or something. Great. I spend hours and a lot of money. We do this great, beautiful video, and it's well done. What happens in 4 years when that, cooling tower is that, we're changing the controller, or it's going to be very different, right? That what do they say when they make a movie? That's a wrap, right? Like literally you're not touching it again. You're not going to go in there and make edits. It's once you're done, it's done. Whereas the simulation code is very easily for us to go in there and let's change out the controller. We have new controller set up here. So that allows us to keep at the pace that really the world demands today.
This is so fascinating because one of the questions I had, and I believe you're answering it through that, but I'll let you throw anything is like if you take the UA, for instance, across the nation in different areas, they have different needs. And all the trades are like that. Like there's specific areas, up north compared to south in certain areas. So this allows you, if you have a client that comes to you saying, I'm really interested in working with you, you can put something specific in for them, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, like oil heating stuff, right? You're not going to see that outside of New York or New England. And so we can still build that, put it into the catalog, and it might sit there and someone in Southern California is never going to touch it, but the folks in New England will for sure. And so, we do two things. One, we call it general catalog training, right? Which is agnostic, fundamental learnings around, activities and around particular pieces, like general pieces of equipment, right? You might have like a heat pump, but it's not going to be a specific brand. But then we also do specific builds, which is either for manufacturers or big enough training organizations who say, hey, we really need fire safety training, or we really need this one particular thing. So we'll scope that out with the client. And because of the engine, the investment in the authoring engine, the price of delivering that is, it looks a lot different than it did 4 or 5 years ago. If you were to go to somebody and say, hey, I want a VR training on X, Y, or Z, they probably gave you a price quote in your eyes, like the cartoon eyes that jumped out of your head. You probably did one of those. And so, but those days are kind of behind us because of the investment we made in the factory. We actually call our authoring tool a factory line when we stand up, a group of designers and sim developers to build a particular piece of content. So
I want to take you on the other side that I said I wanted to get to is if I am, like the head of the ITI, the UA, their training program, and I am looking at results, how to better my program. What does it look like through their eyes? Like, how can I monitor participants going through it? Can you give me some insight of like, what information are they getting by using your systems?
Okay, they're going to think that like I fed you those questions because we just launched, and actually ITI was one of the beta customers, the thing called the Command Center, which is exactly what you sort of were asking is how do they see and control what's going on. And this Command Center, as you can imagine, it's a dashboard that gives visibility into all the users, exactly what they've done, exactly where they're struggling. I can see Melissa's struggling with some of the electrical stuff here. Let's put Melissa with Jose because Jose is our best electrical person, right? They can assign things, so they can design their own competency paths and say, look, these are the 12 competencies I need you to show competency in, or activities I need to show competency in, and so I'll design that competency path for you, and you'll have to log in again and show that you're doing the activities and passing the assessments. So we'll often have multiple modes of how we deliver this stuff, and in online learning it's called scaffolding. And so you might have a training mode or an instruction mode where you're getting a lot of guidance along the way, and then you pull that away and you'll have like a challenge mode where we'll actually randomize faults or the like, and you won't get as many aids. We'll pull those away. And then you'll have a field challenge or an assessment mode where it's like a real activity in the field where you don't get all the benefits of those learning support tools, all that scaffolding around you. Now you actually have to go and show it. So all of that stuff's recorded. So I know exactly who's been in there, how long they've been in there, what courses have they completed. And I can assign them with dates like, I need Jennifer, I need you to finish this by, October 14th. I need all of these courses done. And I have a dashboard where I can see that in real time.
Okay. So break this down for me. If I'm somebody that's never used like an LMS system, a learning management system, in my apprenticeship program, and you guys come in and show me this great, like I'm going to have a command center, I can roll this out. Do some people just have that look about them like, whoa, this is a lot going on. Like, how am I ever going to figure this all out? Like, how do you get them to the point where this is an amazing tool for them? Is it hard or
that
aspect?
There's a couple things. One is, we've been selling this to these industries for a number of years now, and there's no question there's been some resistance, right? Particularly the head of training has been doing this for 40, 50 years, and they have a certain way of doing things, and you're asking them to change the way they do things. And that is a challenging thing to do. So, you've got to be able to demonstrate the observed benefits. For sure. You got to make it as user-friendly and the onboarding as inviting as possible. But you ultimately do need to have somebody who's willing to put up with it, also say, all right, I'm willing to learn a little bit here myself too. And if we don't have that champion, it's an uphill climb. And so there's some opportunities out there to say, it's a shame that organization, doesn't have a champion who would a little more tech forward, a little more digitally, minded, because until that changes, we can't force somebody to do something like this. So it's the nice part is it's a modest investment of time to get a pretty powerful tool that really can enhance a program. So, but I'm not going to say it's just like, it's like, oh, well, I bought bananas my whole life. Now I'm asking to buy an orange. Good. That's simple enough. I know how to buy fruit, right? We're asking somebody to change their model a little bit, invest in like understanding something's a little different here. And hopefully if they make that modest investment, they're going to end up with a more powerful training program. Now, that's sort of all encompassing. The thing that sells the people the most, though, is when I can put a headset on them. If I can put a headset on even the biggest skeptics, it's fun to watch them, change, right? Literally in front of my eyes. They go, I'm not sure I'll buy this. And I say, great, let's have you troubleshoot this rooftop unit, this 12-ton rooftop unit. And I put them in a headset, and they look at their hands in the virtual environment, and they can see their hands in the virtual environment. And the next thing you know, they need to do an activity where, they got a manifold or a multimeter in their hand, and they can look, and it feels like it's in their hand. Their brain is fundamentally tricked that it's in their hand. And then you see them get on their knees and actually reach down and start using the leads and taking measurements. And long story short, they take off that headset, and they went from that roof to back in the conference room where we are, or training center, and they kind of look at you. And it's kind of a joy in my life to see that reaction, because you rarely get to kind of blow someone's mind in life. And this is one of those opportunities where I get to do that. And so, good VR, not just our stuff. Our stuff's, certainly solid, but good VR. When people try the newer, higher end VR now, unfortunately, there was some early stuff that was kind of crappy. But if they haven't tried it in the last year and they try it and they take that headset off, you usually see a big smile, and depending on their level of profanity, you usually get like a holy cow to holy something else, right? And so that's fun. And then there's a little more appreciation for the online sims, right? Because then you actually see, okay, I see the online sims through a slightly different light now, right? It's not just a video game. It's actually a piece of a training puzzle here, or a training continuum. And so interestingly, when we introduced the VR training with the exact same content as the online sims, I thought, the online sims will be devalued, right? They'll be less valuable. And in fact, the opposite has happened, because what they've seen is this VR is incredible. I'm not always going to have access to a VR headset, but geez, that's nice. I can just now log into that same thing I did from home and get a similar experience, right? So you've actually given them a space to map to, an appreciation for what we've done with the 2D versions of those simulations too. So it really is it's not easy sometimes to get somebody to adopt a new technology, but it's certainly rewarding.
It actually sounds amazing. I'm just like, I want to do this. I want to see what this is like to go through the experience. Because I know so many of them are using it even in recruiting. They're using a lot of VR when they go out to schools, high schools, to try to get their next generation because people are so drawn to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I do say, when we talk about recruiting, and we hear that a lot now with people using our stuff to do that, one, I'll ask them first, like, are you digital first, right? If you want to attract a 19-year-old to do anything, you better be digital first. And, even without our stuff, like, do you have the right website? When they look you up, do they, can they access it on their mobile? Because they're going to look, because ask a 19-year-old to do anything today. Tell me where a restaurant is. What are they going to do, right? Look on MapQuest or whatever it is. Tell me, what do you think about the weather? Like, they're going digital first. Everything they do is digital first. And so, we always say, make sure you're digital first if you're serious about attracting a younger generation. And then let us help you make that, make that impression that, look, your training is also digital first. Now, certainly you're going to get them excited because if they're looking in your direction, they're looking because they want to do a hands-on career, right? There's something appealing already about it. And so if you can hook them with some more dynamic training that says, geez, we care about development, we're actually tech forward. I think what we're going to find, and we are finding it with some of our smaller service companies, that it's really been a powerful tool to attract people who otherwise maybe might have passed on the career opportunity.
That's so good to hear. So, Doug, I wanted to ask this earlier, but then I got so excited with you talking about the VR experience. But tell me results. What are the results that people are getting? Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot more tracking now of outcomes, right? So you have to take a pre-assessment, and we'll map then what skills where we identify skills gaps, and then you will recommend a learning path or a series of courses, et cetera. And then at the end, they have to take a post-assessment, and to advance, to really get certificate of completion, you have to, and it depends on different courses, but you have to show a certain level of competency to get a certificate of completion. So we actually have a record of, missing questions and not showing competency in all of these, let's say it's understanding the refrigeration cycle or how to use a multimeter or pressures, temperatures, and heat or things like that. And then we see the test outs and how well they do and showing competency there. The other thing we're doing is with the service companies, we just did a case study, and it's a non-union service company, sort of mid-size, and they showed callbacks were reduced by 25%. And after running people through this program for a number of months, and then they tracked callbacks compared to year over year. And that's a big number, right? If you're a service company and you're rolling trucks 25% fewer times, there's a significant savings there. So not only are we able to measure the learning outcomes, but the business outcomes as a result. So, and we're really just at the infancy of getting good at measuring this, right? We're pretty young. And so the nice part of what we did is we were able to lean on the educational science that was demonstrated. I mentioned those three big industries that were using simulation for decades, right? Aviation, you've heard about flight simulators forever. Medical, right? Surgeons have been using simulation for decades too to learn procedures that they can't practice on a human, as you can imagine. And military, where the Department of Defense uses simulations extensively to train everything from tank exercises to, security checkpoints, et cetera, where there's high consequences, right, where people die. So you better make sure they're properly trained. And they have stacks and stacks of research on the effectiveness of simulation, particularly where simulation is woven in and mixed with hands-on. Like, that's the most powerful. You can take a group and put them through all simulation or you can put them through all live training, or you can do a hybrid. And the group in the hybrid always has faster time to competencies and better outcomes. So it's nice that we're able to lean on some of that science too, knowing that what we're doing is fundamentally sound. And now it's been fun the last year, start measuring our stuff specifically, not generally simulation training, but interplay simulations.
Yeah, it's really interesting because even, in my industry, you've got the apprentices, and I start thinking of data in regards to retention. How would this change it for them because they're getting a new experience? And then you go out further in my mind, and I think of all the journey workers that are out in the field that have graduated, but they come back for training, and to have those pieces of, the world evolves, like there's new things in front of them all the time, and to be able to help them with that as well. And then track, like you said, a 25% reduction in like recalls, like that's amazing. That impacts the bottom line. I'm a business owner. You are too. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. I mean, our goal is to be a lifelong learning platform, right? Like you should be, I don't care where you are in your career. We all have to learn, right? I'm sure you've got your business books and, whatever it is next to your bedstand as do I. And that's sometimes a little harder for the trades, hands-on work, or how do they get to practice, right? They can't necessarily go to a business owner and say, do you mind if I blow up your compressor? I'd like to practice replacing one. So in a virtual setting, you can. And so, the idea is like, if we get this right and we can build the catalog and keep it fresh and stay up with technology, that we'd like to be a lifelong learning platform for the electrical, mechanical, and industrial workforce.
That's so exciting for you, Doug, and everyone else that is listening here. So have I missed anything, Doug, that you think is extremely relevant to this market to talk about? I know I've covered a lot, but I always like to give you the opportunity if I have not touched on something that you think is really relevant.
The only thing I would say is we recognize that we are in the first inning of delivering this, right? And so we are listening to the market very closely. Like we don't build a piece of content until the market tells us, hey, we need this. This is what we need to train on. And so, that's one thing I'd like to just highlight is that we recognize, and look, we look at job task analysis, we look at, the certifications, and we can map against that, and that's okay. But we really want to talk to the practitioners a lot. What do you really need to know in a short amount of time? Like what's the first things you need to know in your first 3 months? Obviously, safety always comes right to the top, but what do you need in your next 6 months? And so we try to build curriculum that really speaks to that. Sometimes I find that like when people have these big old massive curriculums, it's kind of like, well, I'm not sure we need to train a diesel technician to break down an engine piece by piece on, in their first 3 months. Like, let's teach them the things that are going to matter in the early part of their career, and let's space it out accordingly. And so we've been trying to be really market responsive. And I say that, partly to your listeners to say like, tell us, what does the market need, right? Like we have a tool to create this great training, and a lot of times we just need the market to tell us like, this would make a difference in how we do our jobs, how we train people, or it's particularly challenging to train on this issue, or new technologies are hard to keep up in this area. We love that kind of conversation because we know, like I said, we're just at the outset of this. And if we're going to build that lifelong learning platform I talked about, it's going to take years and years and constant iteration, updating, new flow of catalog content. Does that make sense?
It does. It's so exciting because Doug, and I appreciate you so much for coming on to share what you do with the audience, because I really, really deep inside of me feel like this is the future of what we're looking at, is this integration of the online, the VR, and the in-person training is where we're going with this industry. So Doug, if people wanted to learn more about you and your company, where can they go to find out more information?
Simplest place is to the web, interplaylearning.com, INTER, interplaylearning.com, or they're welcome to email me directly. It's Donovan, DONOVAN at Interplay Learning. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'd love to hear from some of your listeners.
Fantastic. We're also including in the show notes your website as well as your contact information. So if they need to reach out there, if they didn't quite catch that, feel free to catch it at the bottom of the show.
Wonderful.
Doug, thank you so much for coming on. You have been a fantastic guest, and I wish you the best of luck with your business and helping everyone that needs it.
Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today on Talking Training with the Trades. If you'd like a free resource that discusses opportunities you have in your program, from your recruitment and retention efforts to the risks to avoid, such as those DOL investigations, head on over to talkingtrainingwiththetrades.com to pick up your free resource called Your Apprenticeship Blueprint. Then join us next time and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any important updates for your training program.